So for anything like me, you don't really like music festivals. Like Coachella, for example. It's not really your cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea at all. I just I just don't get it. So for today's prompt, you might be wondering, why is she talking about music festivals? Well, today's prompt is Splendour in the Grass, which is a music festival in Australia, in Byron Bay, which is where Jane Davenport lives. And it's sort of, well, is essentially Australia's version of Coachella. The fashion looked remarkably similar when I did a Google search, and I'm assuming they get the same, well, probably won't get Beyonce, but they might get someone like Lorde, for example. And yeah, so I'm not a music festival person. I don't get it. I really don't. That's not to say that I didn't dislike the prompt, because when I Googled Splendour in the Grass, because it sounded familiar to me, I was like, where is this from? And then I talked to Mum about it, and she was just like, oh, I think I know about that. Yeah, that's a music festival up in New South Wales somewhere. And she was correct. It's from Byron Bay. And when I did an image search, I found that for last year's Splendour in the Grass, or was it this year? No, I think it was last year. There was a lot of mermaid-esque fashion accessories. Well, jewellery accessories, like headpieces or crowns or something to that effect. There was little mermaidy things. And I really like that aesthetic. I am all about mermaids. Just must love the mermaids. So for this particular prompt, I was like, I am going to do sort of a mermaid, but sort of not. Like, she wants to be a mermaid. So she's got this really cool flower crown. And this purple, pink, and yellow stencils that I've got sitting here, they're actually from a kid's sketchbook, from the Nebula Stars sketchbook. It's like a little play set that you can pick up from Spotlight. And I picked it up for myself because they had some stickers in it that I really liked. And the stencils have come in handy, quite surprisingly. But no, they're not a Jane Davenport product, as you can see. It's a surprise, I know. But yeah, it's like I wanted something mermaidy, and I knew I had stencils with shells and pieces of coral and things like that. And yeah, I just figured it would be a good idea to put it all down on this little art prompt thingy. Yeah. This particular piece took, oh goodness, might have been 2.5 hours. Yeah, it took a really long time. I had an image in my mind of what I wanted it to be like, and I had previously sketched it out beforehand, like in a different journal. But yeah, it was just time consuming. I mean, even if I'd free-handed it, it still would have been time consuming. And for this, I used Jane stencils and these Nebula Star stencils, and it didn't it still flowed together. Like, the two of them worked really well, as in a style-wise, but I mean, just putting things together. Oh yeah, see, right now I'm doing a little neck piece thing, and I didn't really like it. It kind of threw off my groove for the entire piece. So I decided I would just gesso over the top of it. But I needed to gesso over the top of it because I reached for my colour sticks again. And I knew that because this is a Daniel Smith watercolour that's already down, it's going to move when the colour sticks get laid on top. The particular colour in the background is called Cascade Green. It's a really lovely Daniel Smith watercolour. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, so I knew that the colour sticks, they would move the watercolour a little bit. So I was like, I will do a thin layer of gesso over the top to see if I can move the colour sticks along a little bit. So I'm just sort of playing around. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do at this point because I hadn't decided to gesso it yet. And I was like, maybe I could do colour pencils. So I was like, let's put down some base layers, do a little bit of shading, see what we go for. And I was just, no, couldn't do it. So I've got some Jane Davenport gesso and I've watered it down. And I've decided I'm just going to go over the top. And this was both a good idea and a bad idea. The Daniel Smith underneath didn't move, which was good. But it did remove, like it did cover a little too much of the pencil lines, more than I wanted it to, basically. But that didn't end up being a problem. The colour sticks moved across the gesso beautifully. Oh, amazing how wonderful these supplies are. They just glide across and smudge out. Just really nice. You can still see the little pencil lines from the necklace, but that's okay. Like when you look at the piece, you don't notice that first. You go straight for the headpiece, which I will come to when I get around to it. But yeah, smudging the colour sticks is always a really fun experience. Like, they don't feel sticky, they don't feel greasy or oily or anything like that. They just feel really nice, really fun. And I never thought it would be the kind of material that I would, medium that I would actually like, because I'm not the kind of person that enjoys getting messy. Like, having acrylic paint on my fingers is fine, but oil pastels, for example, I just don't like the feeling of oil pastels. And, you know, these colour sticks just don't feel like that. They don't feel like acrylic paint, but there's just the texture of it just feels pleasant, you know, and that's what I like from my mediums. I like to be able to pick it up, know what I'm going to do with it, and to not be concerned about cleaning up afterwards or whether or not, you know, I'm going to have stained fingers, you know, these sorts of things. Not that stained fingers is really a problem for me. I find that most people that I interact with on a daily basis just don't care or have already got used to me having paint and ink and things all over my hands. But like, if I was to pick up the colour sticks and then go to a job interview, it would be a little bit different. And the colour sticks, they don't stain my hands like at all. They don't stain, they don't leave marks everywhere. They're just amazing. I struggled a little bit with the eyes here. I've got the Jane Davenport Ultimate Pen in black lace. This one is the matte version. She has another one called Hot Vinyl, which is it dries with a glossy texture, which is really lovely. But I at the time only grabbed the black lace because I prefer the matte look over the gloss. And I feel that I'm getting better at eyes. Like, if you look at my first video, the eyes here are much better than my first video where I did the Taylor Swift eyes, and they just terrible. But for this particular set, for this piece, I didn't try to go, like, to use the brush tip as a brush tip. I tried to use it just as a fine liner, basically. So I was very, very soft and very gentle with my strokes. I didn't want a big, massive full lash or anything like that. And I think the subtlety worked that little bit, because the eyes, they're not terrible, but they're not great. But they're better than anything I'd already done previously. So I've already seen an improvement on myself. I can see where I've improved, what I still need to improve on. And like, for example, those little mermaid scales that I've put on her forehead, you know, I probably should have used the stencil again, but I didn't. And that's okay. You learn. So I'm going over the line work and the gesso with the stencil again and one of Jane's paint over pens. And I decided to use the paint over pens because they had this really bright opaque colour, which is what I wanted. I really wanted that head base to be the focal point, just to be oomphed right there in your face. I want that to be the focal point where you're going to look as soon as you see it. And I really like how it turned out. I really do. Still a little difficult to distinguish between each of the different shells and coral pieces. But I think I did a pretty good job of distinguishing them. And I just, at this point, we're like, the video is only 10 minutes in, but here I was already nearly two hours into the actual video, and it was just, I was starting to get to a point where it's like, okay, I really want this to be over with. Not because I was getting sick of it, but because it was maybe I don't want to push it, and I was thinking if I can finish the last few bits that I've got in my head, it'll be over. But as I was going through, I was just like, I don't want to ruin this. And even if I did ruin it, it wouldn't really matter. Because when you go in to make, into a piece and you have that mindset of it's got to be perfect, you're just adding more stress on top of everything else. And, I don't really want to, write a piece off. So when you're doing a piece and you think you've made a mistake and you decide to tear out a page or scrumple it up or paint over it or something like that, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is unfixable. I'd have to paint over and start again. I didn't want to do that. Mostly because I'm lazy, really. I just can't be bothered redoing pieces. It's just so much of a hassle. Not only does it, one, waste art supplies, and I love Jane's stuff, but sometimes it's a little expensive. Oh, and I don't want to waste her products, I do want to use them up, that's for sure. I definitely want to use them, but I don't want to use them up too quickly, So by me making sure that I wasn't going to quote unquote ruin it, I kept just thinking to myself, okay, well, you could think about this, or you could go with your instincts, and if your instincts are wrong, well then so be it. But for this, I was just like, I had a picture in my mind of what I was going to do, and I did it. Yeah, it didn't come out completely as exactly as I thought it would, but that's okay. It didn't need to come out that way. And I was just thinking to myself, well, it doesn't have to look like anything specific. It's a prompt list that Jane made up. You can interpret these prompts however you like. They're not really, there's no rules really. The only real rule is that you're supposed to use Jane's supplies, which I am doing. Mostly because it's all I've got. No, I've got other supplies, but I like Jane's more. But yeah, there are no rules to art, and this particular prompt was like, yeah, no, I don't like music festivals. It's totally not my thing. But I liked the aesthetic of the photos that I saw. I was like, okay, Splendour in the Grass, it's an actual thing. I'll just do mermaids. Mermaids are my backup. They're my go-to. They're my fun, happy place. I don't feel like I'm very good at drawing mermaids. And I certainly do rely on Jane's stencils and stamps and things like that for this sort of thing. But for this, it was just, yeah, it just sort of worked. And the Nebula Star stencils, which, yes, are a kid's product, they're designed for really little kids, still worked really well for this. And I'm actually really glad that I decided to use those stencils, because drawing shells, drawing coral, yeah, I'm going to have to work on that one a little bit. I did a sketch previously in my warm-up journal, and yeah, I used Jane's face stencil, but I drew all the little shells and the corals and stuff, and I just didn't like it. But with the stencils, it just made everything sort of more cohesive, you know? And by adding and outlining the corals and the shells and stuff with the white gel pen, I think it really makes it pop and gives it that little bit of magical elements to it, maybe. You know, mermaids aren't real, but I wish they were. So it doesn't really matter how they look. It doesn't really matter if I get proportions wrong or right, or maybe they do wear these kinds of crowns, maybe they don't. But, you know, I like to think that my mermaid-inspired music festival lady, you know, would like to wear it. And I'm adding glitzy marker again. I feel like I've used them in every piece so far. Just to add those little bit of extra little sparkles to it. I do wish I'd used a sparkly mermaid marker, but it doesn't matter. It's not really important. I just feel like sparkle makes everything look better. But yeah, I really had fun with this piece. It took a little while. I was getting up and down with the kids, but other than that, I had a really good time. And I am so glad that I didn't mess it up, quote unquote mess it up. But, you know, I did go back after the video was finished and edit her nose a little bit, gave her a bit of a nose job, sort of slimmed it a little bit. Because I showed this to my mum and she's like, oh, you could maybe do that. I'm like, yeah, it's probably a good idea. Thanks, Mum. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. I'm really glad I like this piece. It was a lot of fun. And I really hope that you guys like it too. And by you guys, I mean my viewers, the 3 of you that there are. But yeah, thank you. Bye.